She said it every few minutes, no other words between them, as if it were part of the mechanical workings of time. It was a sentence they practiced together, and she said it perfectly, and when it was time, he grabbed her hands and held them, and felt her knuckles and then her nails, as if he had never seen a hand before. Then he stood and he left without saying a word because he didn't know what else to do. Something pulsed in him and scared him and kept him from saying whatever it was he wanted to say to her. And he wanted to tell her that I will come back if they don't kill me, and I am damn near certain and scared as hell that they will kill me, and you cannot imagine what it is to feel the earth shake with man's destruction and see the blanket of blood across the countryside and to never be certain if there will again be the sunrise. Each morning that it comes, I stare at the horizon and try and draw it inside and hold it. So much that he wanted to say to her, but he could not, as if there were chains attached to his words, and he was sentenced to a life of introspection. He walked along the sidewalk, and the fog swallowed him as he trudged with his pack across his back and his insides splitting, and he listened for her voice to call for him. He listened for her to be the one to reach out and to somehow know all it was he wanted to say. He walked slowly, and listened and waited for her voice to cut through the gray day, but it did not come, and then he was too far away from her to turn back. As he approached the train station, he saw the other uniforms summoned to return, and he heard the engines and the whistles, and he was certain that he was going to die in this war. And when he did, who would be at his funeral to truly mourn? There would be a coffin in the front of the sanctuary of the white-framed Episcopal Church, and his family and friends of his family and dedicated customers of his father's store and friends from the neighborhood and friends from school and an entire church filled with those who had some weightless attachment to him. They would sit on the pews and sniff into handkerchiefs and hug and shake hands, and his name would give them all some strange purpose. And they would be there to share in a sadness, but who would be there to mourn, to gasp and pray and hurt and hope for his soul? Did anyone truly love him, and did he love anyone? And the answers to all of his questions were clear, and that was when he stopped and turned around and headed back for the cafe, walking first and then running. The pack heavy on his back, and his mouth open in panic, and the fog thick and like a curtain that hid her from him. He ran, and he saw the lights of the cafe through the gray, and he called for her and believed that he would have someone to mourn, and someone to mourn him when the day finally came to lie down and leave the world to all the others. He called out to her as he ran, and when he reached the cafe, he stepped inside, and he wiped his eyes and looked to their table. But she was gone. The small man was wiping the bar and humming. He stopped and looked at Nick, and then he pointed toward the door she had walked through. He clapped his hands and said, "Vite, vite!" And when Nick stood still, he slapped the bar and shouted as if to wake him. Nick dropped his pack and shoved it in the corner of the cafe and ran out. So little time between now and the train's departure, and he ran along the sidewalk toward Boulevard de Clichy, where they had walked so often in the last days. Several blocks, and at each turn he expected to see her ahead, to catch her and say those things to her, but she was never there. He wondered if he had run past her in the fog or missed her at another cafe, and the fog seemed to thicken with his anxiety, and he turned and called and searched, but she was not there. He listened for her voice, and he ran again, and he began to grab at strangers, though he knew they were strangers, but he grabbed with the fraught hope that her face would be on the unfamiliar figure. They screamed and slapped when the frantic man in an American uniform pulled at them and said, "Where is she?" And then he gave up on their help. He snatched a cafe chair and stood on it as if it might lift and carry him to her, but there was only the fog in every direction.